Today I'm going to be telling you guys about some basic Gunbot settings and how to optimize your settings in order to be profitable in different market types. So today I'm going to be covering downtrending, uptrending, and sideways markets and how to optimize your settings for those specific markets. Now obviously I recommend you do not follow my settings exactly, as they are never perfect, and I would test your settings before running it with a larger amount of capital just to make sure that they are profitable and you are happy with how they are trading. Settings obviously do require a lot of guessing and trying it out before getting settings that you really want to run long term, but hopefully this video will help you optimize your settings for whatever market for whatever trend your coin is currently in. So first off, let's start with emotionless. Emotionless is just a really good strategy for any sideways market. If you guys are newer to Gunbot and don't really understand how indicators work, I think you guys should definitely use emotionless on a sideways coin instead of watching this video and learning the really advanced settings, as they may confuse you a little bit. So emotionless is definitely highly recommended. Try it out if you haven't already. But anyways, let's get into the rest of the settings. So first off, we're going to look at a downtrending coin, which is NAV. So here we can see NAV. We can see it was in a very steep downtrend after getting added to Binance. So obviously what you want to do is be able to dollar cost average on the way down, or buy at these points whenever it dips and sell once it recovers in these fast moves. And most likely you want to be able to not trade in these zones where they're just falling, because that's when you can really lose a lot of your profit, or that's where you're going to start to accumulate some large bags. Now bags aren't necessarily a bad thing, as you can accumulate more and more as the price does fall, then allowing you to gain more profit once it does go back up. So obviously that's a very important thing to think about, and my settings always include a pretty good DCA strategy or double up strategy in order for it to make profitable in these downtrending markets. So let's go over to Gunbot and choose a strategy. I will be choosing TSSL, as I find it works very well in a downtrending market, as it has two lines when running. One line waiting for a specific percentage move to happen before buying and selling. And, that can be really helpful for following trends and identifying when it's going to reverse. Now, one other thing you do want to think about before setting all of these settings is your period. Period can affect the trade bot very, very much. Obviously, if you do look at this period on TradingView here, I am looking at 1 hour candles. If I did change to 15-minute candles, it would look very different. So obviously, the longer the period, the less trades you will get, but the more accurate they may be in the long run. So for this video, I will just be doing 30-minute periods, as I find it to be a good balance in between getting a good amount of trades, but still following those longer term trends. So first off, let's go ahead and change our period to 30. Next, we want to look at our gain percentage. Personally, I will leave it at 1, as I think that is enough minimum profit to be happy with a trade, and it's also enough for the bot to be able to buy and sell without having to hold bags and hoping that it's going to go up in these markets when they're going downwards. So I think 1% or something around this range of 1 to 2% would be where I am going to go. Obviously, the trading limit is subjective. That is just how much money you have to trade with. So, if you're running 10 pairs with 1 Bitcoin, maybe you want to run 0.05 or 0.02 Bitcoin per trade in order to allow some Bitcoin to be there for dollar cost average in case your coin does go down. So once you've set your trading limit, you will now go down to the buy range and sell range. This is a very important thing, as it does track the percentage movement that the coin does make. So for example here, it will wait for a 0.6% change in price before buying in. And that is in an effort to identify a trend change. So as we can see here, if this went all the way down and then finally it sees 0.6% change, so it goes up 0.6%, then it would buy, thinking that, oh, maybe it's a trend reversal. And then it fell here, but obviously if it did buy right here and it saw the trend reversal, then it could have sold at the top, and you sort of get the gist of it. It can be a very good strategy for this type of market. So personally, the higher the buy range, the safer it will be. Now, I obviously don't mean to set your buy range to 100 or something. The most I would ever go for is 2 or 3%. But personally, I will be setting this to 1% as we are in a downtrending market, and I would only want to see a 1% change in price before really buying in and thinking that it would reverse. So this is in an effort to catch these smaller moves or maybe these bigger dips and get some profit from those. So once you have set it to somewhere around 1 to 0.7, around that range, then I would leave your sell range as is. The sell range is obviously where you're going to be getting that profit from. And again, you don't want to be too greedy, especially in these downtrending markets, which can be quite dangerous. You can ignore your EMA settings and Bollinger Band settings. The only settings that you're going to want to worry about next are double up, which I always enable. Personally, I use double up and not stop loss. Obviously, you can use stop loss, but it's definitely a lot more risky, and double up can help minimize those losses a lot. So what you're going to want to look at is the double up count. This is how many times it will buy if the coin keeps going down. So say your bot buys here and then it keeps going down, then it would buy 3 or 4 more times depending on what your maximum count is. Now, personally, the higher your count is, the more it allows the bot to buy on the way down, the safer it can be. But you also want to find a balance between, being safe and being able to make profit on trades. So personally, I would go for around 4 or 5, depending on how much capital you have to play with. That's a pretty safe range to where you would be able to buy enough times on the way down and not have to worry about, not being able to double up on one of those big moves. Next, the double up method, I would leave it at high Bollinger Band. I find that to be a very good strategy for buying on the double ups. I find that it really does, get some really good entries on the way down. So that I would leave that as is. Next, we have double up buy down, which is the percentage below the last bought price that it will have another double up. Now, this obviously depends on how downtrending your market is. As you can see here on NAV, it's not too crazy. It is pretty steep, but I think something like 3 or 4% would be about the max that I would do. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this at around 4% because I don't want to buy anywhere above 4% from the last double up price. So that is all of the major settings for double up. You can enable RSI buy if you want to be extra safe. Obviously, there are lots and lots of safeties you can keep adding onto this trade bot. So if you really think the coin is crashing and you might get those quick dips, you could enable RSI. And for this RSI buy level, if you want to visualize that, you can just go ahead onto your chart and enable RSI, and then you can see this line right here. If it is at 30, then it would have bought below these levels, so it would have bought right here, right here, right here, right here. So that's a good way to visualize it on TradingView, so you can see where the RSI would have bought if you enabled it. So that can be very, very helpful for downtrending markets, and I recommend you use it if you really think it's going to be a super steep downtrend. If not, you can disable that. Next, there's stop limit. That is completely up to you. I personally do not use it, so I'd leave this at 100 or whatever crazy number you want to set it to. And then OKeys mode, this just stops trading if Bitcoin moves too much. Personally, if Bitcoin's going crazy, I wouldn't be holding it anyway, so I would just disable that anyway. But if you really want to just leave this on forever, then you can always enable that. And then TA always on is very helpful to use if your computer is on for long periods of time. Next, we have an uptrending strategy. So this will be a strategy that is very aggressive for those uptrending markets in order to make profit on all of those moves while still being safe in case it does go down. So that means that you will have a very aggressive buy strategy, but then you will have still a safe double up strategy or stop loss for once it starts going down in order for you to make the most profit on the way up, but then not lose those profits once it does start to go down. So here we have a great example of this. We have VenChain, which was on an uptrend for a very long time and did go up, very fast here. And, you could have made a lot of aggressive trades here on the fast moves that it had on the way up. So for this, we are going to be using BB step gain. Now the reason why I'm using Bollinger Band step gain is because this strategy I find really does maximize profits most of the time, depending on your step gain settings. And I think Bollinger Band is a really good setting for buys, especially in an uptrending market, because you can get those fast dips, buy them up, and then step gain can make those nice profits in case it does pump. But even if it makes a small move, you can still get step gain to sell, at a price right here, and then Bollinger Band buy there, and trade all the way up. Even on these quick moves, Bollinger Band could have bought here, and then step gain could have sold way up here. It's really useful, and I think it's a great combination for most trading. So once again, you can change your period around. Since it is uptrending, you can leave the period a little bit lower, as it doesn't really matter how much volatility your bot sees. You can even set this to 5, depending on how confident you think it will continue to go up, because obviously the lower the period, the more trades it can make, because it will be scanning more often. Next, we have your gain percentage. Since it is uptrending, you can be a little bit greedy with this. The most I would do is probably 1, but some people set it for 10 or 5 if you really think the coin's going to go up. You can also set this very low if you just want the bot to make quick trades. Then you can set it at something like that, but for now I'm going to leave it at 1. Next, we have the high Bollinger Band and the low Bollinger Band. Now, since you are using Bollinger Band for buy, it will only be using this low Bollinger Band. So for the low Bollinger Band, what I will be setting it at is 30, as I think this is a good range from the bottom of the band in order to buy, especially on those uptrending markets, because you do want to be a little bit aggressive. I wouldn't go crazy on the Bollinger Band because you still want to get good entries, so I wouldn't go 50 or something, but I think 30 is a good balance from being safe but still getting in on a lot of those moves. Finally, we do have the sell levels for step gains. This is the percentage profits that you want your bot to look at for selling. So personally, I would go with a minimum gain, especially in an uptrending market, of 0.8. I think once you hit that 1% profit level, just a little bit below that, that's when you want your bot to start looking for a sell. Next, if you really feel confident in your coin, I would go somewhere around 3 or 5% for sell level 2. And then finally, I would go with 15% for sell level 3, as I think 15% move, one of these quick spikes, I do not really think would go anywhere over 15%, or at least if it does, it would be highly risky. And that's what you want your bot to do. You want your bot to minimize the risk. And so that's why I'm going to be setting it at 15% and leave sell level at 2, as you do want to hit that minimum profit of 3%. Finally, you can enable double up, although for this example, I will be using stop loss, as once the coin does start going in a downtrend at 15%, I would just want to sell it and hope that your bot stops trading it. Once again, disable OKeys mode, and I would not touch RSI buy or sell, since you do know the coin's going to go up. You shouldn't be worrying about RSI being oversold or overbought. Next, we have sideways. So for sideways movement, we will be looking at PO. So this is a coin that is going sideways a little bit now after hitting its bottom after a extreme pump. So I think this is a really good example of a coin going sideways, as we do see some very quick movements. And a sideways coin I would define as something that is either on a very slight uptrend or a very slight downtrend, but to the point where its moves aren't making a very important effect on its price, where even if it does dip a little bit very fast, that it's going to recover, that it's going to keep going in within that range. And this is an area where bots can make a lot of profit, because there is just so much volatility and so many spikes for the bot to take advantage of. So for this, we are going to be using Bollinger Band, which I think is a great strategy. Sometimes you just have to go back to those basics, and Bollinger Band is really great because it uses just a very classic strategy that a lot of you guys may have seen in the past, and I will just go ahead and show you an example of it right here. So here we have Bollinger Bands, and you can see sort of the buy and sell points of when the bot would see to buy and sell. So we are going to be using 15-minute periods, as that's a good balance once again. And so you can see some trades it would have made: buy right there, sell right there, buy right here, sell right there. It gets a lot of those small movements in, and especially in those big movements, it won't always ride all the way up, but it will get it right before, and hopefully sell at the beginning of the pump. So this strategy can be very, very useful. So we're going to go ahead and choose Bollinger Band, set your trading limit, set your period to 15 or 5. Personally, I like to use 15 as sideways can sometimes have some bigger moves that might require a longer period. Next, I would set gain. Since it is sideways, you do want to be, leaning towards micro profit. So you do want to set that at 0.6. Obviously, depending on your exchange, you can set it lower maybe. The EMAs you don't have to worry about. And next we have high Bollinger Band and low Bollinger Band. This is the most important settings you will want to be worrying about. Personally, I like to be very conservative with my lower Bollinger Band. If you do set your Bollinger Band negative, then it will buy below the Bollinger Band. So that is obviously very safe. As you can see, every time it does dip below the Bollinger Band, it does usually end up rebounding. If not, it does continue its downtrend. So personally, you could set your Bollinger Band to around -10 or 10 positive. So, personally, I will be using 5 for this example as it's right in the middle or around the middle. And for high Bollinger Band, that is the amount below the top Bollinger Band that it will be selling at. Most of the time, I find it does hit the Bollinger Band. So for this setting, I will be using something around 10, as I do want it to sell once it does get to the top. Obviously, the more you increase these numbers here, the riskier it might be. But if you really do believe in the sideways movement, then you might get more trades if you do make these a little bit larger. But I think 5 and 10 can be very good, for this example. Next, we do have double up or stop loss. Once again, you can always use double up for all of these strategies, but personally I will be using stop loss for this, as this is another example of a coin that you only want to be trading once it's making those small moves. And then once it does dip a little bit, you want to reset your bot. You don't want to have it holding that bag. You want to reset it and allow it to trade once again at that lower price. So that's why I will be setting a stop loss of around 5 or 10%, somewhere in that range, in order to make it so it won't be stuck with a bag. But if it does dip a little bit, for example right here, then maybe it would have stop loss right here, and then it would have caught some profit on this trade, and then it would have made some profit up here. So that's the thing, stop loss can get some immediate losses, but then it can help you for once it does start trading once again on its way back up. Anyways, guys, hopefully this has helped you develop some strategies for Gunbot. You can spend hours and hours tuning certain strategies for Gunbot and for different markets. I'll also give a shout out to Alanster, which does make some scripts on TradingView, which do allow you to visualize some Gunbot tuners. So here, for example, is his Gunbot tuning. In order to visualize, Bollinger Bands. These can be very useful. They are free. You just have to contact him and ask for access on TradingView. Anyways, guys, I will leave the link in the description for that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you guys in the next video.